Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story and we put the spotlight on you. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Someone encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. The same can happen to you. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this ministry with a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. Check out my website and see what I offer that can be encouraging, inspiring, and transforming for you. I'm available for speaking engagements, in person and virtual seminars. So please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Garry Mansell, who is a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader with over 40 years of experience. Our guest has built and led thriving businesses throughout his career. His deep seated knowledge, accumulated from years of practical experience, and his captivating storytelling, I trust, will provide an enlightening and enjoyable listening experience for listeners of this podcast. And so I am thrilled to have Garry come and share with us today. Garry, will you share briefly a little bit about yourself and where you are being interviewed from with our uh, listeners today?
I will, James, and thank you for the invitation, first of all. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Um, in terms of where I am, I'm actually in the UK, as you can probably tell from the accent,
Mm-hmm.
in a tiny country village, which is about 40 miles north of Cambridge, and most people know where Cambridge is, so that's what I use as a reference point. In terms of my history, I had about 20, 25 years in the corporate world, first of all, doing various jobs, but mainly working in systems and procurement. Um, I ended up working for Mars Incorporated, who are an American company, as many of you will know. Um, but actually, the last 20 years of my career, because I'm getting older now, has really been all about building businesses in the technology area predominantly. So, building software businesses and either merging and acquiring with others and then eventually selling. The last business I was with some partners of mine, was an Anglo-Swedish business, and we sold that to an American unicorn in 2016, 2017. And since then, I've been working as a business advisor to startups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, been doing quite a lot of angel investing as well, doing public speaking as you do,
Mm-hmm.
trying to inspire and encourage people to go into entrepreneurship and
Mm-hmm.
explaining what intrapreneurship is by comparison. Um, doing some university work with a few of the universities in the UK, again talking about entrepreneurship and business, and just generally really having quite a lot of fun. And the other thing I've done is I've written a couple of books on the subject. One of
Okay.
which was during lockdown because I had to do something.
Mm-hmm.
um, and the other one, which has just been published as
Okay.
really firmly about entrepreneurship.
All
So
right. I'm
that's
gonna.
me, and that's what I've been doing.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you the opportunity to, let folks know where they can get your books
Sure.
and a little later on in our interview. But I've read your profile, and I must say it is very captivating and exciting with all of the things that you have done, and it's just a great story. I practiced law for a couple of years, messed up with in gambling, and of course just retired after 32 years and 9 months of pastoring, and started this podcast. And so
Right.
I'm excited, and I know what it's like to kind of try to push things. And so you to see your uh, profile is very encouraging to me because it lets you know what you can do. So how and why did you end up doing what you did in your career? Because it's really one of those exciting careers. What made you get to that point?
I think so many things start when you're young.
Mm-hmm.
I was the first person in my family to ever do a degree, um, but a number of the people in my family actually own their own businesses. And I always remember a while back, I think I was about 8 or 9, when I was with one of my uncles, and I was actually doing some work with him in his business, just
Mm-hmm.
generally chatting. And he always turned around to me and said, "You know, you never get real freedom and you never get rich by working for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you really want to be able to make your own choices, your own decisions, then one of the best ones you can make is to work for yourself." And that kind of stuck with me, but I didn't really have an idea, quite frankly. Um, and I'm a product of a typical English education,
Mm-hmm.
a grammar school kid who went through the system, did pretty well. Um, but then, truthfully, I got a bit bored with school and I got a bit frustrated with school. And I guess nowadays teachers and I would have been classified as one of these bright kids who was disruptive. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was often not there, putting it very crudely, but I read books and I passed exams. Those were things I was good at. So I could kind of game the system. Um, but then I started working and studying as well. Um, and then I did a degree in chemistry, and there was no other reason other than it interested me. So at least my parents indulged me, to say the very
Mm-hmm.
least. But I had no real idea for a business.
Oh.
So because you have to work, because you have to move on, I started working in industry. Um, I had a very successful career. I was very fortunate. The right things came along at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I worked hard, as a lot of people do. And eventually I got to the point where I was actually leading a team who were buying logistic services for Mars.
Mm-hmm.
So, the trucks that move product around the world for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in 1999 when the internet was just really becoming commercial. The first things were happening. And I
Mm-hmm.
looked and I thought, that's the opportunity. This is where it comes along.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually took the kind of approach that we've been taking and I've been building for buying transportation, and I transformed that into an internet business. And that was the start of it, really. And it was a
Okay.
case of waiting around for the idea. And it was pretty late. I mean, everybody thinks as entrepreneurs and internet entrepreneurs as
Right.
being 20 years old or 18 years old. I was in my early 40s when I started my first business. Um,
Okay.
I've subsequently found that the most successful entrepreneurs tend to be the ones who start when they're in their 40s, and it's not surprising. Experience does count,
Yeah. Yeah.
which, kind of helps. There's a
I,
reason for getting old in this world.
Yeah, I understand exactly where you are. I'm there myself, so it makes a lot of sense. So I definitely hear you. I'm in reading your profile. You've had more than one business, and so obviously have done quite a few things. So I'm curious, as I know listeners of this podcast would be curious, because I see where you maybe have sold business, you've started another one, or what have you. So there are a couple of things that you have to do in doing this. So can you tell listeners of this podcast, when it is time to sell or dispose of your business, and when you do it, how do you go about obtaining funding for your new business? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit for us?
Yeah. In terms of making a decision about when you sell a business or you exit from a business in some way, I've never done an IPO of a business. I've never taken it public. It's
Okay.
always for me been a trade sale or an acquisition or a merger with another business.
Mm-hmm.
But very often, I actually believe, and the entrepreneurs I speak to now and advise, it's there comes a time where you think, can I carry on doing this? Is it really fun anymore? Do I want to do this again and again and again? Do I want to carry on building it? Or have I got the strength and the capability to actually take it to its next level? It maybe needs a vast input of funding, and you don't want to dilute the business too much with that
Mm-hmm.
funding. Or it needs you're looking at it, you're thinking, I know where it needs to go, and that's going to take another 5 or 6 years. Have I got the energy to do this for another 5 or 6 years?
Mm-hmm.
I always
Uh-huh.
say to people, it's kind of when it feels right. And in terms of the exit as well, I see a lot of people make mistakes and they get a little bit greedy with an exit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Particularly when you're talking about millions of dollars. I try and explain to people that it's great to sell businesses for millions of dollars, but truthfully, if somebody comes along and offers you $50 million for your business, for example, and you're trying to hold out for 52 or 53, I give them a piece of advice, which is, take the 50. Because
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly, once you've got 50, you add another two or three to it, it makes no difference to your lifestyle whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get this opportunity maybe once in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be greedy about it. Recognize that enough is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see people kind of trying to keep score with this and trying to win. And there isn't a win when you sell a business,
Mm-hmm.
there's a mutual benefit. You're selling something to somebody who wants it, who will take it on and do something else with it. They
Mm-hmm.
may make it hugely successful by comparison to you. They may fail because the business is all about you and the way you run it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a decision you have to make. So generally, it's about feel, and it is about the right time in terms of whether you've got the interest and the love for the business still. Because when you start a business, you love it. It's your
Mm-hmm.
baby. You're building this. It's an idea. You have a vision that you want to take somewhere, and you maybe get to that vision, and it's what's next.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have no idea what's next, and it needs to go to somebody else's hands to take it and make it something better.
Okay.
Um,
You're kind of
so
talking to me. You're kind of talking to me now. I, I, this is good advice for not only for listeners of this podcast, but even for the host. I hear you very, very well. This makes lots of sense. I am, I, like I told you earlier, I'm a retired pastor. And I started this podcast probably about 6 or 7 months before I retired in past December. And I built it. I've now done close to 90 podcasts. Okay. Interviewed close to 90 people, should I say, as guests. And finding, uh, what I'm finding is that a lot of people going through different things. Uh, you have individuals who maybe want to start a business. Some, just decided that they want to do something else. Some people are depressed, and I have a wide spectrum of people who I think are listeners of this podcast. So, if you were to share with someone uh, about what it takes, you know, to start their own business, uh, give them some encouragement, or try to inspire them along the way. Uh, what would that be, and how would you go about doing that?
well, I think the first piece of advice I'd give somebody is don't think that you have to be Bill Gates. Yeah. You
Okay.
know, a valid business can be something which is something that you do. You could turn a hobby into a business that you
Hmm.
can make a very good living from. You
Okay.
know, it doesn't have to be some corporate mammoth thing. It doesn't have to be something that you can sell for millions of dollars. Lots of people I know have businesses where they're sole traders and they work and they make a very good living and they provide for their family and they do all those things. So the first thing I would say is ignore what everybody else tells you. Yeah. really, it's not their business. It's your business and it's your life. You
Mm-hmm.
decide what you want to make of it.
Okay.
Um, and that's where I talk about freedom. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
the fact is, very few people fire themselves. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things when you're running a business is it's pretty much guaranteed employment for life while you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that worry goes away. You get
Mm-hmm.
whole sets of new worries, but in reality, I don't think people are born entrepreneurs. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think people largely are taught to be entrepreneurs. You decide you want to start something. You have enough of a vision to see where it can go. You understand what your customers are like and who they are, because
Mm-hmm.
that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and basically, you're selling a service or some goods in exchange for what you're doing. Um, so I think entrepreneurship is available to everybody. Now,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people say, well, I don't have the funds to start. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pretty much a number of people I know get very creative about how they start. They do it as a side piece. Now, it's not easy work. A lot of people I know start their business as, what entrepreneurs call a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, I'm working 9 to 5 or, 8 till 6, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this in my spare time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you don't have to abandon everything and just go completely into the idea of this new business. At one point, you probably will if it's been successful. And that's a big step. But have confidence in yourself,
Okay.
and you don't have to have a college degree to do it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to go through the standard approaches that pretty much everybody who you listen to, and I guess me included, tell you they have before they start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my family, people didn't have degrees. They started businesses. One uncle was spraying cars for a living and ended up doing very high tech paint spraying. You know, um, and it's a case of look for the opportunity. Always look for the opportunity. The other thing I say to people is network like crazy.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and do it freely. Don't think you're in the situation. I see so many people when they're networking thinking, "What's in it for me?"
Okay.
The most effective networking that I see is where people give freely and are
Okay.
really surprised by what comes back.
Okay.
Um, there's a fabulous a friend of mine. She actually built a chain of coffee shops in the UK way before Starbucks and those guys were actually across in the UK and being successful. And she's massively successful now. She's
Mm-hmm.
actually an ex-attorney as well who decided she didn't want to practice law.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote a great book, great title called Anyone Can Do It. And I
Mm.
really would advise anybody to get that book from Sahar. Sahar Hashimi is her name.
Okay.
And it is just a classic inspirational book about a completely diverse step in her own life.
Mm-hmm.
Trained attorney who went, no, I'm not going to do this. I don't like practicing law. I don't like doing it. And she got her idea by copying the New York culture in the early 90s for coffee and skinny
Mm-hmm.
lattes
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
low fat muffins and all the rest of it, and
Mm-hmm.
said, why can't I bring that to the UK? Which is
Mm-hmm.
exactly what she did. And she had no idea whatsoever about running a coffee bar. All
Mm-hmm.
she did was she went and poached a bunch of staff from Pret a Manger, one of the the sandwich
Mm-hmm.
companies, and she just basically built this business and she winged it. She
Okay.
always says, you know,
Mm.
if in doubt, jump, the net'll appear.
I hear you. I hear you. Oh, exciting. Very, very interesting because I know, there are people who want to do something, but they don't know how to step out there or feel as if they're going to fail and what have you. So giving them this kind of advice, I think is very, very helpful to them to be able to just take that step. I'll be honest with you, when I started this podcast, I didn't know anything about podcasting. I mean,
Exactly.
absolutely nothing. I just knew that I wanted to do something that I thought would be encouraging. Having been a minister, that I thought would be encouraging, inspiring, and hopefully transforming to somebody. And I wanted to bring people on that could help in that area. And so I just started doing some research, started,
Yeah,
looking up stuff, how you started, what you do, this type thing. And look, you I think of my 89th guest, and then plus I appear on a number of podcasts myself as a guest. As a matter of fact, I got one where I'll be a guest on at 2 o'clock today. So
yeah.
this is what you do. I agree with you. I love what you say. Um,
There's a massive amount of free resource available to teach people.
yeah.
You know, there's a lot of bad things with the internet.
Hmm.
I turned around to my wife when we were starting an internet business and said, the internet's going to destroy the world one day. I'm sorry about it, but it will. But
Yeah.
in the meantime,
Uh,
we're going to make a career out of it, make a
right.
living. And
Right.
there's a lot of really good stuff that you can learn.
I
You
agree.
just have to apply a critical mind to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you're thinking about your business, I say to people, have a clear vision and be
Right.
able to tell the story. Because when you need money, when you need funding, yeah, and
Hmm.
I'm an angel investor, truthfully, it's not so much the business I look at. When
Right.
people are coming to me and pitching their business, I
Hmm.
look at the founders. You know,
Okay.
are they actually, do they have a vision, and can they tell me the story? Can
Hmm.
they take me on that journey from
Hmm.
this is where it's going to start and this is where it's going to end?
Right.
And storytelling is a massively important piece
Okay.
of life
Okay.
generally. And and people live by stories. We all know we pass our history on, we pass everything on using stories.
Okay. Beautiful. I love what you just said. If you you're interested in starting this business, and I noticed you said I read it somewhere about angel groups uh, and pitching to angel groups. What do you mean, and what are you talking about when you say that?
Ah, yeah.
Talk. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Well, it could be that your business or your business idea gets to the point whereby it needs significant amounts of money in terms of
Okay.
funding.
Okay.
Whether you're going to be spending that on marketing or getting new people
Hmm.
or getting new equipment or whatever, and you want to exchange part of the shares, the equity in your company for that money.
Hmm.
Um, there are lots of ways to fund a business, but if we're talking about angel groups,
Okay.
typically angel groups are groups of high net worth individuals, people like myself who've sold their businesses
Okay.
and are looking now to invest their money
Okay.
into other new businesses,
Here,
hopefully to get a return.
here in America, we'll be talking about something like Shark Tanks.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, I got you. Okay,
yeah.
I'm with you now.
Um, and there are, I mean, across both, I mean, pretty much every country I know in the world
Hmm.
has some form of angel networks.
Okay,
In the USA, there are tons of them. In
I
the
got you.
UK, there are tons of them. And the
Okay.
other thing as well is governments
Hmm.
tend to support um, investors like myself
Hmm.
because they want people coming in, adding money to new businesses that will create jobs and create wealth. Yeah, one of the proudest things I have is the fact that in the businesses where I was part owners or was leading them or whatever,
Hmm.
we were actually we were helping people grow their families and have lives. Now, in exchange for that, they were giving me their time, and
Okay.
that's the most precious thing you can ever give somebody. Really, is your time,
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
because you
Okay.
never get it back. Um, but to be in the situation where you can, at the end of it, not only have you provided jobs and security for people in exchange for the work they've done for you, but very often, almost entirely, the key employees or the early employees that we had in our businesses, they were shareholders as well. And
Hmm.
it was brilliant when, people would come to me and say, yep, it was great. I've now got another job in the business that we've sold to,
Hmm.
and I've been able to pay off my mortgage.
Right.
Or, one of the guys was great. He said, I've taken the whole
Okay.
of my extended family from the UK and we've gone to Disneyland.
Okay.
So
I got you.
it's those things. But angel
Right.
groups are these groups of people who
Okay.
will listen to business ideas,
I got
a
you.
pitch, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
and decide whether they want to invest in the business in exchange for a share of it.
I hear you. I got you. I know exactly what you're talking about now. In the role of marketing. and how you make your business a knowledge leader at the lowest cost. Could you share a little bit about that? I know, and maybe I should just ask you your view on the role of marketing, because I struggle with that myself, you know, it, because there's a cost sometimes involved, and you're wondering is a cost worth this? I get people all the time wanting to see if they can't, help my website do better or this or that. I can reach more people on my podcast, and I'm dealing with how much is this going to cost? You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I do.
talk about that a little bit to it.
Well, one thing I will say is I think marketing is the best way of putting it is a necessary evil,
Okay.
um, because there is always somebody who's making their business out of selling their services to you, and
Okay.
some of them are good and some of them are dreadful. Yeah,
Hmm.
um, it's very easy to start yourself and say you're a marketing professional when you're not.
Okay.
And also, I mean, I have this thing which amuses me. A lot of people say marketing's a science, and I laughingly say, no, it's not. I did chemistry. That's a real science. That was my
Okay.
degree.
Okay.
Marketing's more of an art. It's about philosophy and psychology.
Hmm.
Um, Again, if we think about the smaller businesses who don't have big marketing budgets,
Hmm.
one of the things you really do want to do is create this position of knowledge leadership. And the way you create knowledge leadership is if you have something which is unique, or you're working in an industry which is reasonably unique. For example, there's a business that I'm invested in. I was speaking to this morning, and they do interior design. So basically, they'll design an office for you, or they'll design a gymnasium, or they design hospitality spaces at sports grounds. And they do it everything from the design right the way through to the fitting and the establishment. They hand you the finished product,
Hmm.
basically based upon what you do. And there are lots and lots of those companies around in
Okay.
this world,
Okay.
but they have a unique proposition. What their unique proposition is they actually really work hard to produce a sustainable solution. So everything they put in can be reused or repurposed when it comes to the end of its life. And they work with suppliers who specialize in that. Doesn't mean they're the cheapest, but for companies that really want that kind of thing and are really committed to it, they're perfect. And one of the things they do, and they've been in existence for 4 years now, and in the last 3 years, they've been running a single event um, where they bring experts in the field of sustainable production,
Hmm.
sustainable carpets,
Hmm.
sustainable workplaces, sustainable gymnasiums, and they actually freely share that information. And they produce and they provide the conduit for that information sharing. And they do it via an annual event, in a real
Hmm.
place with real people physically there. And what's happened as a result of that is their event has become really popular. They've got a massive presence on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
yeah, which they're a business to business company.
Hmm.
They've got a very big presence on Instagram and Twitter. They don't do so much TikTok, but they'll be doing some of that. So they're using social media very creatively, and
Okay.
they're doing it themselves. They're not spending money on other people doing it. They're actually saying marketing's about common sense.
Okay.
Marketing is about knowing my customer and actually transferring the information. And the knowledge leadership piece is they're now known for being the interior design company that produces sustainable solutions because they invite experts along to their events
Mm.
and they invite people along who are interested. And then, of course, word of mouth happens and you start getting this snowball effect. And, it's like everybody knows Heinz, everybody knows Coca Cola. Now, they
Right.
spend a fortune on marketing now, but when
Okay.
they started, they actually just started by word of mouth and
Okay.
talking and doing something which is impressive. And this company, a company called Layered Design, in their events, they never talk about their own business.
Hmm.
Never. They
Okay.
talk about the industry and they
Mm.
talk about the future of the industry.
Mm.
And if you can start doing that and start putting that vision and those ideas and telling the story and sharing the possible with people, by blog posts, by all
Hmm.
those things,
Okay.
then you can actually do something about it. And now, truthfully, with a bit of common sense and some generative AI, let's be really frank,
Hmm.
Chat GPT does work. I mean, you can tell if it's Chat GPT if you just
Right.
cut and paste
Right.
it,
Right.
but add some thought and add some process to it as well,
Okay.
and you can really, really quickly produce a lot of material.
Hmm.
So that's what I mean by knowledge leadership and how you get it without spending a vast amount of money.
Okay. Okay. Um, Listeners, don't go in place. Got a few more questions and some more good information coming from Gary. But first of all, I want to ask you, Gary, uh, for people who are interested in your book, a little bit more about you. How can they reach you or contact you? You have a website or book company or whatever that they can get more information about you.
Okay, well, the best place to go to is my website, which is garrymansell.com, and
Okay,
it's Gary with two R's. And I'm
right.
not really sure whether it was the registrar who couldn't spell or my mother who was having a joke, but
Okay,
it's Gary with two R's. It made
that's
me kind of unique, and a lot of
uh,
people make that mistake, but it's
right,
Garry,
right,
Mansell.
right.
Um, and basically, it's got a little bit about me. It contains my blog. It's got links that you can buy the books on.
Okay,
Um, Not a very big site. It does what it
okay,
says.
okay,
It's there to provide information.
okay. Well, thank you. I know listeners will be interested in knowing that. Because they're getting some very valuable information from you today. And I do appreciate you sharing this with us. Well, a few more questions I want to ask you, and that is uh, what are the essential members of a team that one needs to build to propel his her new business to uh, the heights that it needs to get?
That's a great question, and lots of people have lots of theories.
Mm-hmm.
But I picked up on. I read a book a few years back. I think called The Boardroom Entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
and they answered that question pretty well. I don't agree with everything in it, but if you're building a if you're building a business, particularly one where you expect it to grow into a company, you're not a sole trader. You need a team around you.
Mm-hmm.
A village brings up children, as they say. Um, Very often, I would say the first person into that business, if it's you, are the founder with the idea, and usually you're pretty creative. Um, a lot of the things that creative people are very good at, they're actually not very good at things like process and
Mm-hmm.
accounting and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if I think about the last business I had, which was built from absolutely nothing, um, one of the most valuable people I had as part of my team was somebody I called a foil. It's somebody who I could throw ideas at,
Okay.
and they would actually, curate those ideas for me. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it got to the point. It so happened that the foil in my last business was also another. He fulfilled a very important role in the business, and he was the finance guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, um, but he was perfect. We'd sit there and we'd have board meetings and
Mm-hmm.
discussions, and just with the look of an eye, he could tell me when I was being an idiot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
and he could just literally, we knew each other so well that
Mhm.
he could say, "Do you really mean that?" Just with a look.
Mhm.
Yeah, or if I hadn't picked up the look, he would literally say, "Do you really mean that?" Or "Is this what you mean?" That foil. It's the phrase where you're countering ideas. That's really important. The other thing you need is somebody who can sell. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, very often the entrepreneur themselves, they have a great vision and they can do this, and very often the entrepreneur does a lot of selling. But
Okay.
once you start to get bigger and bigger, you need somebody who really can sell.
Okay.
Yeah, who actually knows and understands and takes all the hits. Quite
Okay.
frankly, a
Mm.
good salesperson can take all the no's.
Mm-hmm.
and still carry on and
Right.
will actually work their way through.
I
You
like
know,
that. I like that.
another, yeah, I mean, another great person to have with you to look for is what I call the doer, the person who really can transform the entrepreneur's ideas into something tangible. You know, they might be a software engineer if it's a software business, or they might be a real engineer if you're making something.
Hmm.
But you know, I'd sit there and I say, in my mind, I can see this system
Hmm.
doing this.
Okay.
It,
Okay.
it, it works a bit like this, and etc. I can't write code. I mean,
Right.
my code writing days finished 40 years ago. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
but you have
I got
people who really can manifest stuff and make
you. Okay.
things. And
Okay.
you know, at the end of the day, a business is all about either providing a service or making something that people want. So you need the entrepreneur in there, you need a finance guy in there, you need a sales guy in there, you
Okay.
need a doer, and you need a foil. You need somebody to. I mean, I always used to say my foil's name was Terry, and I always said Terry's job in my business, apart from being the best management accountant I ever met, he controlled my worst excesses.
Hmm.
When I was having 999 ideas a day, he could help me work out which one of them was the idea
I got you. I
and
got
get
you.
me to accept the fact that the other ones were rubbish because they
Hmm.
were,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm. I got
So,
you.
so those for me are
Okay.
the keys. And you kind of do need somebody who looks after marketing,
Hmm.
despite what I say about it.
Okay.
There needs to be somebody who actually tells the world what your business is about.
I got you. I
Um,
got you.
and very often when the business starts, people have dual functions and dual roles. And you know, if we had more time, I'd then talk about how it
Yeah.
develops.
Yeah.
Because
Let me kind of bring it to an end with asking you could you kind of just talk briefly about these two questions I want to ask you, and that is that when you're pitching your business idea, and many folks will hear this and they will think about how can I do this? So when you're pitching your business idea to a potential investor, what is the single most important thing you need? And then last, talk to us about what were the defining moments in your career uh, to date that led you to where you are now. Can you
okay,
just briefly
well,
talk about that for us, because my time is about
yeah,
running out and I want to kind of get those in.
sure. Well, the first one about when you're pitching an idea is you have to have a story,
Hmm.
and that's the most important thing.
Okay.
You have to make the angel investor or the investor of any type. You have to tell them a story, give them a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Okay.
Show them what the possible is. That's what to do.
Okay.
There's lots of other stuff as well. I mean, get into the detail of it by all means, but the
Hmm.
key, tell them the story.
Okay.
Defining moment in my career, I think for me, very often it's the same with a lot of entrepreneurs, is you tend to be a bit of a control freak.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the defining moment in my career is when I realized that I was actually the one who was preventing my business growing
Mm.
because I wanted control and everybody asked questions of me instead of me letting them do the jobs I was paying them to do.
Oh wow.
And the minute I actually recognized the fact that I was a barrier and I was a block because I couldn't work more than 18 hours a day and I had people queuing for answers. Yeah.
Okay.
So stop thinking you have to have all the answers for your business.
Mm.
Actually, employ good people. Never be scared by surrounding yourself by smart people because
Mm.
that's how you're going to get on. Yeah. And actually let them go and do their jobs.
Well said. Well said. Gary, this has been an awesome and a powerful interview with you today. And I want you to know how much I do appreciate it. And I know listeners of this podcast will definitely appreciate what you have had to say. And so, listeners, I trust that you will contact the website that has been given and that you will benefit from this interview today. And until next time, peace and blessings to each of you. Gary, I want to say again to you, thank you so very much for agreeing to this interview today.
James, it's been a real pleasure. Great to meet you.
Thank you.